Welcome to the Remodeling Reimagined podcast, the podcast that gives you an inside look at the remodeling world from award-winning designers. On this week's pod, Cindy Cipriani sat down with designers Melissa Firth and Ken Endt to discuss what makes a great kitchen designer. Without further ado, here is your host, Cindy Cipriani.
Hi everyone, thanks for joining. You know, we have a hot topic today, and that is choosing a kitchen designer. You know, after everyone's been locked in their homes for a while, they're getting kind of tired of living with that old kitchen, and they're starting to see that, you know, being home and having the right kitchen is really important to having a smooth running household. You know, we spend so much time in our kitchens, and it really becomes the hub of the house. And so when you start thinking about remodeling your kitchen, how do you choose the right kitchen designer? There's a lot of them out there. So today I'm here with Melissa and Ken, and we're going to be just answering some questions that people have asked us, and also giving you kind of an insider look at how we feel you should choose the best designer for your kitchen. So let's start out with maybe Melissa, and what would you say would be how to ask the right questions so that you can choose the right kitchen designer?
Well, I think a lot of folks that we talk to are always thinking, how's it going to look? What color cabinets do I want? What kind of countertops do I want? What do I want on my floor? But really, it comes down to function. So we really dig in with the customers on, you know, are you right-handed or left-handed? What side do you want your dishwasher on? We talk about how far the refrigerator is from the sink. And I always tell people that function comes first. We can make anything look pretty, but if it doesn't work, what's the point of doing it?
Yeah, so a great idea would be to take a tablet and start writing down things that don't work in your kitchen. And what could some of those things be, Ken?
Well, there could be a lack of countertop space. There could be an inefficient work triangle, so that where your refrigerator and stove and range or cooktop are located are either too far apart or too congested, or they just don't work in the right way. There could be a lack of storage, a kitchen that doesn't have the proper lighting so that it's difficult to see what you're doing at your countertop. And of course, today's kitchens being the heart of the home, people are entertaining more in their kitchens, so it's usually finding a way to have visitors and friends and family join you in the kitchen while you're preparing meals. And so space and floor plans are the ultimate part of that.
Actually, you know, kitchens are becoming multi-generational today, because oftentimes we have people who have young children, and then the grandparents are coming over to watch them, or perhaps they're, you know, all in the kitchen trying to prepare meals. So even seating heights is important. If you have, you know, little children and then you have an island, is that too high for them to sit? Or if you have someone who is maybe a grandparent, do they not like sitting high? They might want to sit at table height. Those are all little details that go into planning your kitchen so that it works and functions for your family. You know, sometimes people say, well, what is the best trends for resale? And should you really design your kitchen for resale or for the next person? What do you think about that, Melissa?
No, you have to design your kitchen for how it works for you. If you're planning on reselling in the 5 years then turns into 10 years. And if you don't do it for you, every time you're going to regret doing it the way you did it. If you're thinking about, oh, well, what about the other homeowner? What happens when I put the house up for sale? Things change between now and then. Things are changing, you know, every day, every month, you know, so doing it for how it works for you has to be a top priority to you.
Yeah, and that comes right back to choosing the right kitchen designer, because sometimes kitchen designers, they just go by trends and they don't really listen to the needs of each individual homeowner. Can you expand on that a little bit, Ken?
Sure. I could start with contrasting it with some other more basic kitchen designers, ones that you might find at certain showrooms, and that's all that they do. They just produce cabinet layouts for you. So they're not really going to have the opportunity to get to know you and your family and what your daily needs of a kitchen will be, what your needs might be during holidays when you're entertaining. And they'll probably never come to your house to really see the space and have that opportunity to get to know really what is going to be the best solution for you. So our level of getting to know you is much more involved. We feel it's critical if you're really going to be able to provide somebody the right solutions. So that's the most important part. Will they come to your home? What are they going to do to get to know you and find out what your needs will be?
Yeah, I found that going into people's homes, every single house is different. It doesn't matter even if you're in a development where all the homes are the same, because everyone lives differently. Everyone cooks differently. Everyone has different taste. I remember going into one home and they had 6 sets of dinnerware. And I thought, wow, that's like a lot. It's a lot of dinnerware. But she loved plates and she collected them from different places and she used them every week. You know, she said every day of the week they had a different set of plates, and that was very important to her. So if she just would have went to someone who, you know, like you said, was just planning out cabinet space, they may not have realized that, and they may have just put in the cabinets that fit in that many inches and not really designed it so that it was functional for them. Have you ever run into something like that, Melissa?
Yeah, it's funny you say that. I actually had a customer who collected candles, like from Bath and Body Works, you know, the round candles. And when we ended up designing her kitchen, we did a shallower depth cabinet on the other side of her island where she could store all her candles with extra shelves so she knew what to grab out. And it was funny. She's like, I need to have to store my candles somewhere that they're easy to get to. And you open the cabinet and I'm telling you, she probably had 40 or 50 candles in there.
Wow. Yeah, I think it's so interesting, and it also helps to get to know their personalities. About, you know, what they do. Some people have, you know, huge cans of oil, you know, olive oil that they use every day. Some people have loads of canned goods. Other people have huge cereal boxes because of, you know, kids in the house, or late night snacks. So there's just so many things to consider that if you have a kitchen designer that never looks in your cabinets, they're not going to know how to really design it for you. And part of it is also organization. Have you found, Ken, that people are really, really organized in their kitchens normally?
No, I laugh because I have yet to meet someone who is actually very organized with their kitchen. I mean, after all, that's usually one of the biggest motivations of someone wanting to remodel their kitchen, because they have found it unmanageable. They don't know where to begin with trying to accomplish everything they want to in their own set of space. So we talked a little bit about people who have collections, whether it's spices or candles or different plates. I did have someone who collected plates for different holidays. So they had an Easter set, they even had a St. Patrick's Day set, so on and so forth. And they wanted to be able to store those in their kitchen too. So we were looking at longer term storage solutions. But I guess the whole takeaway is, as it relates to organization, the types of different storage that you're going to need and the different types, so quantities and types for long-term storage, for plates, forks, silverware, and dishes. You need different quantities, so someone who's going to work with you to evaluate what your current needs are, and then making sure that the new kitchen layout is going to accommodate all of that.
And there's so many tools out there, accessories that can go inside cabinets that we can really solve any problem that somebody has. I had a customer who was a baker, and she wanted her big KitchenAid mixer easy accessible all the time, but she didn't want it sitting on the counter. So we dedicated a cabinet to a lift that lifted the mixer up to countertop height. So it's really digging into how they use the space too to help them, organize. But one thing you both said that I thought was kind of funny is so many times you go into somebody's house and they're like, oh, I cleaned up for you. Well, we really wish you didn't clean up, because then we see what works and what doesn't work. And people are like, oh, I'm so embarrassed. I'm like, well, I'm here to help you fix it. If you cleaned it, I don't know what I'm supposed to fix or what works and what doesn't work.
That's so true, because a lot of things end up on the countertops because they don't have a place to store them that's, in a good area, or they have to walk across the room to get what they need. And so it's really not functioning. And so everything ends up on the countertops. So being able to see that is really important, so that we know how to, make things work for them.
They know we're coming, so they want to clean.
Right. We should tell them, don't clean.
Don't clean.
And the other thing I was thinking of that, a lot of kitchen designers don't even ask is pets. People have pets of different sizes, and most of the time their pets are eating in their kitchen. So if you design a beautiful kitchen and there's no place to put your dog bowl, or your great big satchels of treats or food for the dogs, then that can become a problem too. I had an interesting one where I walked into the kitchen and they had two large dogs, and they each had a crate in the kitchen, and it was taking up so much space. And I said, well, can we move the crates? And they said, oh no, they sleep here, they have to be in the kitchen. So I thought, oh my goodness, how am I going to design around that? Well, we lifted a window and ran the countertop underneath the window and actually put those two dog crates underneath the countertop, and ordered 2 extra cabinets in case they did ever move. They could take the crates out and replace them with 2 cabinets. And the dogs loved it. They were out of the way. The homeowners loved it because they weren't tripping over them anymore. And everybody who came in their kitchen was like, oh my gosh, what a great idea, So listening to your client is really important. And would you say, if somebody was talking with a kitchen designer, what are some of the questions that designer should be asking them? And if they're not, maybe they should move on and find a different kitchen designer.
So it starts with really the personalized plan. So they should be asking how many cooks are in your family, because that's going to affect that work triangle, making sure that there's enough counter space for both chefs to be cooking at the same time, as well as clearances between cabinetry. So how many cooks do you have? What type of space do we need to accommodate that for? And they say, well, are you someone who maybe doesn't cook a lot? Or are you really just someone who does more takeout? So having a good organization for all of your leftover containers or takeout containers, and just maybe a more simple range that you might put in there means you don't necessarily need the fancy hood. It might look great, but is that really high on your priority list if you're not a big cook? So it starts with, why do we use that kitchen? It's for cooking and eating, and getting those 2 fundamentals squared away, to me, would be step 1. And then, of course, your daily life. Is the kitchen more active in the morning because you're getting the kids ready for school, or it's just where you like to ramp yourself up for the day by hanging out, doing some reading, having your coffee, a little bit of a snack? Like, what are some maybe creature comforts that you'd like to have in this kitchen for you to have that personal time? So you really have to look at each time of day and how you might be using your kitchen. So all of those personal things.
Yeah, I had one where they had a table that they never used, but every morning the couple would have coffee together, and they were complaining that they had to take all of their coffee stuff and their paper and everything that they had in the kitchen over to this little area in their family room and sit in there. and they really wanted to be in the kitchen looking out their beautiful windows. So I took out the table and we put in 2 really comfy chairs in there with a small table. And they said that's their favorite place in the house now. Every morning they get up and they have their coffee right in the kitchen looking out their beautiful windows. And they said, we never would have thought about just taking the table out because everybody has a table. But if you're not using it, why have it there? So
Right.
I think, a lot of those things come with experience. And, maybe we could talk a little bit about the difference between having just a cabinet designer and a design build kitchen designer. And maybe you could talk a little bit about the difference with that, Melissa.
Well, I think one of the biggest things is we actually, go into people's homes. Where a lot of times when you're just looking at a kitchen designer that's working at a cabinet supply house or a cabinet showroom, you're back there looking for something pretty. You're picking out your cabinet because, I like that style, But if they're not in your house, the things we just said that we all just talked about, they're not going to think about. They're not going to think about, where do I store the dog food? Or where is the microwave if the kids just want to do their, a bag of popcorn when they get home from school? I don't want them in the middle of the kitchen where I'm getting dinner ready. So digging into how the space is used from a function standpoint, do you have a lot of kitchen utensils or big bottles of olive oil and spices? When you walk into a cabinet showroom, they're not asking that. We're actually going to be sitting at your kitchen table with you, opening your cabinets, looking to see what you have and making sure that there's a home for everything.
Yeah, and Ken, what are some of the things that homeowners should be asking their designer as far as maybe their experience or their education or, how they keep up with current trends?
Absolutely, because there is another type of kitchen designer who probably doesn't know much about construction whatsoever. They just might, I can help you select everything so that it looks pretty together. So just to kind of circle back, Cindy, on your earlier question about a design build firm and those advantages, is that we have knowledge about construction as well. So as we're going through each stage of the development of the design of your kitchen, we're going to be able to guide you on what those construction ramifications might be. What will we now need to do on the build side, and then give you some continual guidance on what those costs can be affected too. So that we are able to take our experience and guide you in making the right decisions along the way so that we're accommodating your budget and being able to do things realistically on the field when it comes to construction. So I would definitely say that's an advantage of a design build firm. And then to answer your question directly, yeah, you want somebody that is going to be really knowledgeable about the new products that are coming on the market. And I don't mean just what is the hot finish or the new trend, but things that are newer products like smart faucets that can really have a positive impact on how you cook, how you prepare meals. Are they up to date on the latest products that are available to a homeowner? Because if they don't know, how are you going to know? So their continuing education is going to be very important. And working with the NKBA and the set of guidelines that they have for what are ideal kitchen spaces, clearances, and other requirements. Oh, thank you. It's the National Kitchen and Bath Association. So they are an accredited body that has guidelines that spells out what kitchen and bathrooms should be built to certain standards as they've determined. So knowing those, reading up and being familiar with those things and the latest recommendations from that association, very important. So continuing education is critical. And that's something that you should ask. What was the last class that you took? What was the last article that changed your perspective on kitchen and bath design? What inspires you? All are great questions, and the more open-ended they are, allow that designer to share, will give you a really insight on what their priorities are or how they perceive their role in a kitchen design, and see if that really matches up with what you're looking for from that person.
Yeah,
Ken,
I think
you
also. Go ahead.
Sorry,
Melissa.
Ken,
That's
you
okay.
mentioned like clearances. That's
Yes.
a big one that people don't always understand either. Is, you can't have your dishwasher and stove across from each other, because what happens, if you're open them both at the same time, they
Sure.
they could hit. Make sure there's enough room behind you that when you are opening your refrigerator, that your island's not in the way, that somebody can still walk by. So those minimum clearances are very important, and that's something that a lot of homeowners don't think about. They just said, oh, I want an island and I want as much countertop and storage as I can get. Well, it still has to work.
Right.
Yeah, there's so many details that go into it, right, Ken?
There are for clearances, and then just what is convenience. So the placement of the trash can for me is always an important consideration, because I go into so many kitchens now and there's that freestanding trash can, and they say, well, I need to get this tucked away somewhere, and I say, I agree, that would always be great, but it's, for me as a cook, I may not be the best cook, but I like to try and do it as much as I can. When I'm doing a lot of prep work, I like to have the trash can near where I'm doing that prep work so I can leave it open. But if that means now it's in between the island and another countertop that are opposing, if I'm leaving that open, I can't get around. So again, it can be a clearance issue. So even the placement of the trash can for how you hope to use it is an important detail. Just one of the many that there are. Besides those aesthetic things, it's all about function.
Yes, and a good thing to do is to look up people's after pictures of some of the kitchens that they've designed. And, they all may look pretty, but really start looking at the detail as to where things are placed. Does it look like they took a lot of time in thinking about the functionality of the kitchen? Or do all their kitchens just look the same? Sometimes people have a style, and they just put that style in any house, whether it matches the house or not. That's the other consideration, is that we want it to enhance the style of the house, and to be able to, so it doesn't stick out, like you just have this brand new white kitchen and it doesn't go with your 1940s house. So there's just a lot of considerations with that. So looking at pictures will help you to see what the style is and how versatile people are, because I've done kitchens, I think, in every different color, wood, stain, paint, all over the board, because everyone's different and has different taste. So looking at house, looking at people's Pinterest, looking at their websites will give you an idea as to their style also. The other
Cindy,
thing
you
I was-
mentioned,
Go ahead.
Cindy, you mentioned, how it fits with the rest of the house. I had a customer who had a historic house in Morristown, and they wanted a really, really modern kitchen. And it just felt like, I said, you're walking in a total different universe when you walk into the kitchen. We have to bring some of the characteristics of the traditional home into the kitchen, even though you want a modern kitchen. So we simply, did some details on the ceiling, some crown molding, things like that carried through the house, that they could still have their white cabinets. They had a blue backsplash. So finding those elements that makes it look like the house, everything blends together, that it's always been there and it doesn't look like stick out.
Yes, you can update without making it look like
Yes.
one room is just this satellite orbit all by itself.
Yep.
Ceilings are always an opportunity. That's why I think your solution was so great, Melissa, because it brings an architectural element to the room itself, that those cabinets, being more modern, could be within that space. But ceilings are, no matter what the room, bathroom, living area, are a design opportunity that is often overlooked. So that was a great idea that you had.
Thanks.
And I think a lot of people are concerned about the cost, and they feel like if they can, just buy their cabinets directly from a cabinet supply place, that they'll be saving money. What are some of the cautions that people should be aware of in how that cost can start rising if they order these things themselves or they don't have a kitchen designer?
Well, sometimes someone will just take a measurement and say, I have 120 inches. That's a nice even 10 feet. And they say, well, I just need 5 2-foot cabinets, and I'm just going to tuck them right in the wall. And they think that's how things are going to work. But if only it were that simple, because no wall is completely true or plumb. In other words, perfectly vertical. There's some slopes that exist in every flooring and ceiling, so you have to know what types of allowances to make. So if a homeowner was to just order their cabinets based on, hey, this is what I know I can fill in my space, it's almost certainly not going to work. So a kitchen designer will know how to compensate for those allowances. So you should be relying on their expertise to make sure everything is going to fit together and also have clearance for things that come into a corner space. Are your drawers going to bump into one another? Will you be able to open your door a full 90 degrees? Or if it's a cabinet next to a wall, again, will that cabinet open the full 90 degrees, or is the handle going to bump up against that wall? So understanding how to fit within a space is going to be really important.
And Ken, you mentioned 120 inches. It could
Yeah.
be really, in reality, it could be 119 and a half, and then your cabinets aren't going to fit. So
Very true.
It's, it's figuring out exact measurements when you're doing cabinets. There's not a lot of flexibility to shove a cabinet in somewhere if it's an inch too big.
Right.
The other thing a designer will help you do is budget for the entire plan, because people, we do this all the time. We know what things cost, and people look at Pinterest, they look at these different pictures on Houzz, and they're just gorgeous, and they have no idea what the components of it cost. So, like, I had a client who showed me a picture. She said, this is my dream kitchen. And she said, I already went to a cabinet place and had them price out the cabinets. And I said, okay, well, this is beautiful. There's a 48-inch Wolf range. There's a 48-inch Sub-Zero refrigerator, 2 sides. The appliance package itself would have been almost $40,000.
More than the cabinets.
Yeah, more than the cabinets, and and she had no idea. It was just gorgeous, and she was like, "Oh my goodness! Like I don't want to spend that on appliances." And I said, "Well, then your cabinet price is going to be different because those are taking up space for the cabinets." So it was really a matter of finding out what she liked about the picture, and then starting from scratch and designing her kitchen just for her. So that's the advantage really of working with a designer, is that we're not going to use your budget against you. Oftentimes people say, well, I don't want to give you a budget because you're going to just make it up to that budget. And I tell people, no, it'll probably be over your budget if you want, if you get everything that you want. But we do have ways of making it look like that beautiful kitchen without using a $40,000 appliance package. So cost is really on the top of people's minds, and you're not going to save money by not using a kitchen designer. Sometimes it costs you even more in mistakes and in not getting what you should get, and not having that functionality and all of the knowledge and input that designer can bring to the table. So there's 3 different kind of types of kitchen remodels. One would be just an update where people want to do like countertops, flooring, and a backsplash, just kind of update it a little bit. That you really don't need a designer for, because you're not really changing anything. Then there's the pull and replace, where people are taking out exact cabinets and things, and they just want to replace it exactly the way it is. You don't really need a kitchen designer for that. However, if one thing changes, then it starts to change a lot of other things, and that's when you start needing a kitchen designer. And if you want to add to your space and you want that functionality, then you really need that kitchen designer. So am I going down the right road on that?
You are 100% correct. And it's funny, even something as minor as changing one part of that work triangle, and again, that would be either your refrigerator's location or the sink or your range or stove top. And once you alter one of those legs, you really need to consider how that affects the other two legs of that triangle. So even from the small type of placement change of one of those items, all the way through wanting to remove a wall, because everyone wants that larger space, that open concept. I should say mostly everyone. But taking out those walls, whether they're partition walls, which means they're not load bearing, or the ever important load bearing walls, and what is it going to take with a certain engineering to make that wall stay up, and then what can you actually use that wall for if you were continuing some of the cabinets there.
And I was thinking, if they want to add space on too, a lot of our projects are kitchen additions, and people feel like they need to go to an architect first and design that addition. What are some of the problems that people can run into with that, Melissa?
Well, you know, architects are great. They definitely have a place in projects, but architects don't know what things cost. And again, they're not digging in and asking all those questions that we've been talking about. You know, how do you use the space, all of that. Where when you deal with a design build company, we're going to design it to how it works for you. We're going to give you an estimate on what the job could cost. Once all that's finalized, the architect gets involved. If you had involved the architect in the beginning, he could have designed something 2 times what you want to put into it, or didn't think that you wanted 6 people at your island, and he only put a 4-foot island in there. And again, a lot of times when you talk to people about, you know, adding square footage on to the house, they have numbers in their mind. Oh, I want a 10 by 10 addition or a 20 by 20 addition. Well, a lot of times you work backwards of what you want in the space. Maybe it only ends up being 8 by 8, or maybe all it is a 4-foot bump out to be able to get a bigger island in. So digging into, again, how you use the space, and not just hiring an architect that they're not thinking of it that way, is really important, because there are a lot of people out there that spend thousands of dollars for architects, and then we end up that it doesn't work out, or it's more expensive than you wanted to put into the house, that we're redesigning it anyway.
Yeah. And one thing that Ken brought up earlier was lighting. And a lot of times architects, they don't really do the mechanical drawings unless you pay them extra to do that. And so they're not asking a lot of specific lighting questions. And what are some of those considerations, Ken?
Well, I'm always about good lighting. There are different types of lighting. You have general, you have accent, and task lighting. And each of those provide a different role and a different layer. And so you need to consider your needs for each of those. So you start with your general illumination. How does that light up the space? Accent lighting is going to help to draw your eye. It's a little bit more of an aesthetic choice. And then task lighting, where you can actually see what you're doing in different locations. So under cabinet lighting is very critical for illuminating your countertop space, and it also makes your backsplash look fantastic. But in each of those different categories, there are so many different solutions that are available. The different types of light, their luminosity, how much lumen output do they have? Even how high your ceilings are can affect the type of light that you're going to put into the space, because you have what's known as light fall off. As light comes out of its source, the intensity of the light drops with a greater distance. The right types of fixtures, their color output. You might notice that some lights have more of a white or bluish appearance, and other lights can produce a yellow or warmer light. So knowing all of those options for each of those three categories gives you so many different varieties and options it can almost be overwhelming. So working with someone who is well knowledgeable, well versed in lighting is going to be very important, because it's going to make truly it shine in a beautiful way, but also allow you to be a better cook.
Yeah, all of those things are so important. I was thinking even of an example. I went to someone's house and they wanted to redo their kitchen, and they said, I want to take out these soffits. And my neighbor did it, and it looks awesome. I want 42-inch cabinets up to the ceiling. And they kept talking, and I said to them, do you have a basement or are you on a slab? And they said, oh, we're on a slab. Well, I knew right away that probably their heating and air conditioning was in those soffits. And I said, is your neighbor's house on a slab too? And they said, oh no, they have a basement. So, sometimes without a lot of construction knowledge, you just don't realize that some things are possible in some houses and some things are not. And, what would have happened if they went to a kitchen place and they just ordered 42-inch cabinets and they said, oh, I'm going to take out these soffits. And this is the stuff that happens on TV, when they start renovating and they haven't looked at anything and they take out soffits and they're like, oops, there's a sewer pipe in here that can't be moved, or oops, this was our heating and air conditioning for our upstairs. So those things can be extremely costly and can all be avoided by having someone who knows what they're doing with construction and can guide you through the entire process. And so I think we've covered so much on finding the right kitchen designer. And I wanted to thank you guys for helping our homeowners to have more information. I know that there's so much more we could cover, and we're going to do that in following podcasts. So keep following us. And if you have questions, please write in. You can go to our website, write in your questions. You can follow us on Facebook or Instagram, and we will be glad to cover all of your questions in upcoming podcasts. So thank you, Ken. Thank you, Melissa. And I hope everyone has gotten a lot of information out of this and can find the right kitchen designer for you so that you can have your perfect kitchen.
Once again, thanks for tuning in, everyone. And if you're looking to start a remodeling project, you can learn more about our design process at Cipriani Remodeling Solutions.com. And you can follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter.